Recording.
Hello, Leokadia Oreziak. Very nice to see you. It's an honor for CENDA having you here with us in the occasion of the 25th anniversary of CENDA. And so thank you very much for your time and your attention with our country especially and with CENDA. And well, we want to remember those days when you participate in the commission called Bravo Commission that was devoted to pension system here in Chile, and many things have happened since this days. 5 years, I think, are passed since the commission and your visit to Chile. Well, Leokadia Oreziak is an economist, a great professor in Poland, and she was one of the authors of the ending of the pension system, similar to AFP here in Chile, named Office in Poland, OFE, and she did this by herself. And so this is really, for us, Leokadia is a kind of hero that was able to explain to her country and experts, economists, that were defending this abuse to people. Here in Chile, you know perfectly well, you know our system, and you know that we still have this abuse to people. And as well, we had a few months ago, several protests against all kinds of abuses, including this. And now the country is starting reforms. We recently obtained the 10% of the fund that was now in the hands of the owners, the workers, the people. So we are starting this road, and we wanted to talk with you, to know your opinion and your experience and what you propose in Proposal C for our country, that is very important in the discussion here that are taking place in this moment in the parliament, in the public opinion, in the media, etc. I think Manuel wanted to explain the situation we have here, but I wanted to thank you in the name of CENDA, the directory of CENDA, our director, Hugo Facio, and all the staff, all the people that are working in CENDA, that we are really grateful with you for your time here with us. Manuel?
Well, first of all, hello, dear Leokadia. I join Roxana in our gratefulness to you, in our admiration for you, for what you have done in Poland and what you have done in Chile. We were very impressed by your bravery and your knowledge. It was really a great feat to sustain Proposal C in the Bravo Commission quite alone. without speaking Spanish and without being English your first language. English was pretty much the language spoken in the Commission, but it was your second language. And even with those hurdles, you were able to sustain Proposal C, and you were able to force really to the Commission to include a third proposal. I know that some of the participants in the Commission, especially the women that were present there, or some of them, were in a sense supportive with you, and all of the Commission was impressed and very respectful with you. But in that way, it was a very brave thing to do, to come to a country on the other side of the world where you don't speak the language, and to meet 20 or work with 20 or more people, all of whom were somehow in a plan to obtain some results from this Commission with which you did not agree, because you did not agree with Proposal A and you did not agree with Proposal B. So you presented Proposal C that ended the abuse of the forced saving system, which is really the AFP system. And you pulled this through. So that was a very, very brave thing to do. And quite important, because that proposal, Proposal C, is now from them on an official document of the Chilean state, because the results of this commission were included in the official documents of the Chilean state. And so this proposal has been a very important point in the debate that has gone along during all these 5 years since the commission. And I am quite sure that it will be the proposal that will be implemented in the end. None of the other two proposals were implemented during this year. No change whatsoever have taken place during all these years. They tried during the Bachelet government, I would say quite against her own convictions. I am talking about Michelle Bachelet. Michelle Bachelet, I think, always has had the idea of ending the AFP system. But she is an important politician, very able politician, and she considered that she did not have the necessary political conditions to end the system, nor in her first government in 2006, where she made an important reform introducing a non-contributory solidarity pension system that has been important, and nor in her second government. She was not supported by her own supporters. And so in the end, our government ended without any reform being made. The defenders, I would say, of the forced savings system, the AFP system, scrapped the whole of the Bravo Commission reports and developed a new proposal, their proposal. This was headed by the ministers of finance of the second Bachelet government, and two of them. They both decided to scrap the results of the Bravo Commission, scrap Proposal A, Proposal B, and Proposal C, and presented Parliament at the end of the Bachelet government with a reform project that basically increased the tax on salaries, the contributions to the pension system, hugely. The original proposal, I think, raised these contributions from the current 13% of salaries up to, I think, 18% of salaries, 5 extra points. That was presented during the Bachelet government in the ending months. This went to Parliament and it was not approved in Parliament. Now the AFPs say that they regret not approving that project. The AFPs say that, but happily it was not approved during her government. And then I think this problem and not solving it was crucial to the defeat of the coalition that supported President Bachelet in the next election. Crucial. If President Bachelet would have ended the AFP system, I am quite sure that the coalition that supported her would have made it, would have won the election, but they didn't. We didn't, because we supported, at CENDA, we supported that coalition. Being very critical, but we supported it. But we lost the election, and in the next government, the President Piñera's government, in the first months of the government, they presented the same project again, but this time by the Piñera government, with a few changes, but basically the same project. And this project went through a very harsh discussion in the lower chamber of parliament, in the Chamber of Deputies. And finally, the half of the parliament, of the lower chamber, half of them voted against this, rejected this project. Half of the parliament, of the lower chamber. But they were able, the government was able to convince 2 or 3 opposition members of parliament, and finally they just got it approved in the lower chamber, and it went to the upper chamber, where it has been in discussion up until today. So that project has not been able to be approved until today. So nothing has happened with the pension system in the sense of reform since the Bachelet days and since your proposal C. Nothing has changed. And the winners of that commission, the winners, the guys who got the most votes within the commission, proposal A, has not been implemented. The ones who came in second, proposal B, that they got another several votes in the commission, their proposal has not been implemented, nor has been proposal C. So your proposal is still standing. Well, in between, Roxana mentioned it, not only did the governmental coalition of President Bachelet lose the election in 2015, it was, Roxana, I think. No, in 2018, the election, the next election, they lost. We lost. Not only that happened, but in October 18 of last year, of 2019, in October 18, the whole of the country exploded. We are a country used to earthquakes. Chile is renowned by the infinite number of earthquakes that have taken place in this country all the time. Because all the country...
Leokadia knows perfectly well, because I remember when she were here on those days, we had a very heavy earthquake, and Leokadia were at the hotel and we were talking with her. I remember that.
Yes. Well, we are used to earthquakes because the country lies in a fault, in a geological fault. And so Latin America is going over the Pacific Ocean, the plates where they both lie. And in that process, we have always having huge earthquakes. Well, but socially, at least my generation, as I am very old, I have witnessed at least 5 large social and political earthquakes in my lifetime, at least 5. And within those, 3 that were proper revolutions, because they lasted for 7 years each, the first 2 one, and this one that is starting is, I think, a proper revolution, what you call a proper revolution. Because upheavals you have in Chile every decade, but these large periods of massive participation of the people in politics, I think we have had 3 of them. The first was our revolution with a capital R, and that took place since the middle of the 1960s up to 1973. It was a period of huge, massive participation of the people in politics, and the political system was able, the democratic political system was able to channel this huge energy that was flowing of the millions of people participating in politics, especially all the peasantry. In those years, for the first time, they awaked from their secular siesta and they started participating massively, and they took hold of all the properties in the land all along Chile. And they forced an agrarian reform that ended the old latifundia system. And it was a huge change. And that took place during the started to take place during the government of President Eduardo Frei Montalva of the Christian Democratic Party, and it was supported by the parties in the left, by the socialists, the communists, and other parties in the left, and they approved a law to make this agrarian reform through law and through respect of the constitution of the time. So it was a very important revolutionary change in a country that was made peacefully and legally. So it was a very important historical achievement, I think. I think the people in the world respect Chile for that mainly, because they were able to make large changes, but peacefully and legally. And then President Allende was elected, and he implemented in 2 years, really, this law for all the country. Huge change. And also, President Allende implemented the nationalization of copper, our main natural resource, and many other social changes. Well, the path of progress is never straight any place. It always takes place in a succession of advances and retreats, advances and retreats, advances and retreats, victories and defeats. Well, Chile was no exception for that. If the French Revolution had a period of restoration of the king after 1815, Chile modestly had a period of restoration, not of the king, because we didn't have a king, but we did have an oligarchy, basically linked to the old landowners. And that oligarchy was restored into power by force and by external intervention. In the case of France, also it was by external intervention in Waterloo. Here we didn't have a Waterloo of that type, but we had our own Waterloo in the September 11th, 1973, with a huge intervention of the United States that was decisive in the military, because they had a very strong influence in the military. And that happened. And we have lived through a time of restoration that I think is ending now. And one of the main abuses of this period of restoration was the introduction of the forced savings system. Because through this system, an amount of salaries that is the equivalent of the GDP of 1 year, of the last year's GDP, that amount, but of salaries, and with participation of taxes also, because of subsidies, a sum of salaries and subsidies that is the equivalent of 1 year's GDP, about $200 billion of last year's GDP. That amount of money was extracted from the workers, from millions of workers, and from the state, and transferred to a very tiny group of ruling families. And that has been the AFP system, because the money in the pension fund is in their pockets and has been in their pockets since the start of this system. The AFP system started in 1981, 40 years ago. And we track the net contributions of workers and the state to the system since 1981 up to now. That is 40 years. That is 477 months during all this period. Well, in each and every one of those months, the sum of the workers' contributions plus the state subsidies, less the pensions and benefits paid back by the system, that net sum of contributions has been negative. That is, the workers and the state have only contributed money each month, each one of these 477 months. That's about 14,000 days, because we have the daily record of this. Every month, every day, every year, since the start of the system, the workers and the state have put money into the system after discounting the pensions paid by the system. Up until August 2020, up until this month, for the first time in all these months, in August 2020, the struggle of the people against the system was able to achieve an important victory. That is, they forced these families who hold the money in their pockets to give back 10% of the money. But that 10% meant that this was the only month where the people, not the people really, got back from the system more than what they put into the system. So it has been a huge abuse, one of the worst abuses since the September 11, 1973. This is one of the worst abuses of the restoration of the oligarchy through force with Pinochet. And the democratic governments have done nothing up until August 2020. Because in August 2020, it was the democratic parliament with members of parliament from all the colors of the political spectrum, from the right to the left, with a project presented by a member of parliament that was a militant during most of his life, not now, but most of his life, of the Christian Democratic Party. And the member of parliament, his name is Jaime Mulet. He made the project to force the system to restore 10% of its value to the people. Well, for the first time then, Parliament established its authority and say, this is enough of abuse, at least now with the crisis and the pandemic, you have to give back 10% of what you have taken away. And Parliament approved that by a huge majority. They even had to reform the constitution to do this. They reformed it. And the Chilean constitution is almost impossible to reform because you need huge majorities to reform it. But they reform this part of the constitution. So the time when we are taking, when this celebration of CENDA's 25 years and your visit and your, let's say, magisterial talk this morning takes place in a very, very special month and in very special days. So welcome, Leokadia. Please, we talk to the Chilean people that are watching this presentation all along the country. Here we have persons, workers, and working party leaders, or worker organization leaders, union leaders from all along the country. I think you, within the people that are listening to you, we have this morning all the leaders of No Más AFP movement, and they represent 12 million workers or more. And more, really, it's 14 million because they represent also the people who are retired. And that's all of the population of Chile with more than 16 years of age. And they are present here from all all along the country, from Arica in the north to Punta Arenas in the extreme south. And we will, after your talk, you can have the opportunity to have a conversation with them, and they have selected No Más AFP leaders, has selected a few of these leaders representing all the country so that they may tell you how important your activity has been. I am sorry if this introduction has been a bit long, but I think it was necessary. So welcome, Leokadia, and please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Roxana and Manuel, for kind words directed to me. Thank you very much. But first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to participate in the celebrations of CENDA's anniversary. Because I know that CENDA has a great merit in the fight for social justice, and especially for a fair pension system in Chile. So I am honored to present some reflections on the changes in the pension system in Poland, in Chile, and to present some comparison and some conclusions. And I would start saying something about the process of privatization of pension system in Poland, because the Chilean model was used to this reform in Poland that took place over 20 years ago, and this privatization was not total, but a large part of pension system was privatized then, because 40% of pension contributions charged on the salaries of millions of workers were redirected from the public system to the financial market in order to create this mandatory second pension pillar. So it was I would say very radical reform in Poland. Also the change in the public pillar of the pension system, because defined contribution formula was introduced in order to reduce pensions by over 0.5%. So it was a hidden method to reduce pensions in Poland in order to develop, to create a place for private pensions, for private pensions. I would like to point some common features, some common points of the pension reforms in Poland, in Chile. As regards the background, because I think the background of these reforms are very similar. First point is that the privatization was undertaken under the slogan that the traditional redistributive public pension system may collapse soon and will be ineffective due to demographic changes, and it will not be able to deliver pensions to the society. So it was the slogan. Under this slogan, a reform was carried out, but the real reason was to create a permanent source of additional huge profits for financial market institutions, for big capital, and these groups of societies connected with these institutions. So it was the real reason, but generally it was not exposed to the public, and rather people could hear that the private pensions may support savings, investments, and economic growth. And the real aim of the reform was absolutely different. So it was simply hidden in this propaganda. And I think the second common feature of the reform in two countries, it was that the privatization of pensions was the result of domination neoliberal views in economic and social policy. So Chile was the first, and Poland and some countries were next in this process. Generally, I would say that privatization of pension became a mechanism how to appropriate a large group of workers, a large group of society, a large group of workers, appropriate of significant part of salaries, and direct this money to few groups, associated with financial market and big capital. And over time, these groups has become strong, more and more strong, strong enough in order to block any changes in pension system that would change the situation. So huge stream of contributions, huge stream of money flowing all the time to private pension funds enable them to have real power, influence policy making, law making, and to have media for themselves. So that's why for me it was very strange during this protest in 2016, for example, where a lot of people were protesting on the streets and nothing was said in mainstream media in Chile. Almost no information about this. So, but people know that this system is detrimental for them, and because of high costs and risk associated with private pensions. And all this domination of financial interests and big capital in propaganda, in media, and in making policy making cause that such a harmful system like AFP may last so long and exist for a long time in spite of the social protests, massive social protests, especially in recent years. And there is also a lot of other common features, but I would like to say something about changes in the Polish pension system, because from the beginning up to now, so we can conclude how this system can function and how it can be a real disaster for people and for the economy. So as I've just said, in Poland, over 20 years ago, it was decided to redirect almost 40% of pension contribution to play on the financial market. So generally, it caused a great deficit in public social security, in public pension system, yes, and the public debt began to grow very rapidly, because successive governments have obliged to borrow money on the markets in order to cover this deficit, because if 40% disappeared from public system, so it was necessary to find money to pay current pensions. And it turned out that the creation of the mandatory pension, mandatory second pillar, caused huge public debt, new additional public debt. That Poland even could become insolvent because of that, if any changes were not introduced some years ago. So, to 2011 and 2014, the main changes in the system were introduced because there were two reasons for that. This all huge public debt and the financial crisis 2028. The people in Poland stopped supporting this system because of losses that were at the Warsaw Stock Exchange. General stock prices declined by over 50%. And it is necessary to stress that until now, some stock exchange indices not recovered to the level of before that crisis, not this one, before that over 10 years ago. And I should stress also that the mandatory second pillar created this huge public debt, but also it is very ineffective system to assure pensions for people, because, for example, last 3 years rate of return of open pension funds, in abbreviation OFIS, this rate of return was minus 25%. So it means that during the last 3-year period, funds, the market value of assets being in the funds decreased by 1/4. Yes, so in generally, changes introduced in the past 2011 and 2014 consistent of, first of all, that 85% of members stopped transferring pension contributions to funds. There was a possibility to choose. So 85% of members decided to stop transferring pension contributions. The level of pension contributions transferred to the funds was reduced by 60%, and over 51% of assets were transferred from pension funds to the state budget. And written on individual accounts of insured persons. So people didn't lost anything, but the equivalent of assets accumulated in pension funds were written on their accounts in state social insurance institution. And also there was a mechanism introduced, something called safe slider. So it means that during the period of 10 years before a person reaches his or her statutory pension retirement age, all these assets are successively transferred to state system from pension funds. So in some times they will be empty, but there are some changes to be done, because I would summarize that about 90% of second pillar is already liquidated, but there are still some assets in the funds, and the decision to be made what will happen with this money. It is quite controversial, because the legislative process concerning the definitive closure of open pension funds is underway. It stopped some months ago because of pandemic, and now we don't know what will happen, but the situation is like that. In the funds we have still $30 billion of assets, yes, and the law being in the parliament stipulates that people can choose if they want this money to go to the state system and to increase the value of their individual account in state social security institution, or if they do nothing, So this money will go automatically, definitively, irreversibly to the financial market. So it will be written there also on special individual accounts managed by private financial institutions, and it will be possible to pay to get this money after reaching the age of 60 years. I would say if the latter will happen, it will mean that a big donation from public finances will be done for financial market institutions. And it is absolutely, for me, it's unacceptable, because I think that all assets, from all remaining assets in the open pension funds, should be returned to the pension, to the state systems, should be returned. I would say that it depends a lot of the situation of the public finances during this pandemic crisis. Yes, because we know that situation isn't bad almost in every country, but generally it will be for me unacceptable if this scenario consisting of donating a lot of money to financial institutions for never returning, never. So it will be big loss for public finances. But I don't know what will happen. Generally, all in all, I would say that privatization of pensions in the form of a mandatory second pillar turned out to be, I would say, total disaster in Poland. But nevertheless, a new project was launched last year. This time voluntary, but it is obligatory for all employers, private and public, and main feature of this project is the automatic enrollment. So all employees from private and public sector are enrolled automatically to this system, and if they want, they can simply withdraw from the system, and from this program. Generally, it was expected that over 70%, maybe about 80% of workers will remain in the program. At the moment, only some big companies are participating in the program, because smaller and public sector will join later. But as regards employees from these companies, so majority of people decided to withdraw and not to participate in such a program. But in spite of the fact that majority of people decided to withdraw themselves from the system, so I would say that automatic enrollment principle is not fair, is not good in such a situation when people are registered to the system, which is very costly, very risky, and difficult to foresee what will bring. And I think behavioral economy, it is one of the inventions of this part of the economy, how to apply something like that for the profit of financial market. generally financial lobbies generally was impatiently expecting this system, and now it is a little bit disappointed that participation in this is very I would say very low. And this crisis on the stock exchange that we had some times ago, and we have, so it was a sign that such a, and it was it confirms that such a system, it is a road to nowhere, to nothing. It is only a solution serving for very tiny group of society, very tiny group of people, generally connected with politicians, and they are connected with financial institutions and big capital, and the rest of society is used as a source for profits. So I compare systems like that, when huge, big masses of workers are used to get money for very small groups. So I can only compare in these times to slavery in the past. So, but it is more sophisticated now. So white collar solution, yes, but generally it means the same. And this crisis, this pandemic crisis on the financial markets also showed and confirmed that pensions based on investing in financial market assets are very harmful, bad solution for ordinary people. Yes, and not only because on the risks, connected with the risk and the risk existing on the financial market, but also because of some irrationality of this solution. And I would like to stress my general reflection about this system, how it creates nonsense, how it is irrational, and I would compare it even to a Ponzi scheme, Ponzi pyramid, because I think the real construction of private pensions based on financial market investments is connected with the assumption that in the future also there will be a big stream of money, big stream of contributions going to pension funds. But we can easily imagine if people would like to go to, would like to retire, so they will would like to have their pensions. So pension funds should sell these assets, and there should be somebody to buy them. And if the next generation will be not so numerous and less, there will be much less younger people. So who will buy these assets? Yes, who will buy? So I would say that people should realize that it is the main feature of such a system like AFP, like office, and something voluntary occupational pensions and mandatory systems. They are the same because they are based on investing on the in financial assets, and when there is a lot of contributions, there is a lot of money going to the pension funds, so they feed a boom on the stock market. But when the demographic situation will change, the whole process will be reversed, simply. So it will happen, I don't know, but there is a lot of research showing that it will happen in some times in the future, and 20 or 30 years or earlier, but this process should happen. So it means that such a systems, the private pensions are not able to give safe pensions because and they don't protect people against demographic changes at all. So one can see that the only system which can we support and is more transparent, less costly and fair is the public paying system based on the DB, defined benefit formula, not on the DC formula. Yes, so it is not it is important to stress that all the developed countries saved this public pillar. It is the most important part of their pension system, and only unfortunately such countries like countries of Eastern and Central Europe, including Poland, introduced something like that, like this private pensions. So it was a big mistake, big loss for the country, and history proves that it is very difficult to revert this. Reversal of the system is very difficult because there are still groups of tiny groups, but they are very strong groups that are interested in maintaining this system. Then they will do everything to maintain this system, and the only hope for ordinary people is to know what this system means and how irrational it is, and the only solution is to support simply public paying systems, as I proposed together with cooperation with CENDA, as in my proposal C. So I would like to believe that one day it will happen that Chile absolutely will resign from this unjust, unfair system created 40 years ago. So I would say like I would finish like that.
Well, Leokadia, thank you for your first part. Well, Manuel has make an update of what is happening here, and what you are saying now is very useful for the discussion here, because the similarities are quite obvious and conclusions as well. Especially the marketing, the propaganda campaign that people that are supporting these small groups, tiny groups, but with power and conflict of interests are still here and there, with these marketing campaigns of terror, of saying that this is the only way things can be done, etc. And so this comparison between Poland and Chile is really important.
But I think Chilean people may hope, looking at the Polish experience, because everything may happen. Only patience is necessary, and people should believe that one day it may be changed simply. Like in Poland, but generally, the second conclusion is that financial markets and financial institutions, I would say, they never sleep. They always are looking for profits. So people should be aware of that and try to prevent this and know to do with that. Because if they can introduce and enforce the system, something like that, so they will do it. And if there is not the democratic movement enough against this, so unfortunately, something like that may happen. So Poland, this second project launched past year, is an example. Fortunately, it is on the voluntary basis, but financial market doesn't stop to think how to find the solution. For example, like this automatic enrollment, something new for the profits. So it is voluntary, but generally is obligatory for employers. Yes, but fortunately, workers can withdraw themselves from this program. So, okay, and if there are some questions, I try to answer if I know what to answer.
Manuel?
Well, I think we have to thank Leokadia again for this magnificent exposition. And perhaps now we can go to the second part of our meeting and talk with the Chilean leaders.
Okay, thank you very much. And see you soon.